I'm Pastor Kelly, and we're back today to talk about chapter 20 and 21 in We Make the Road by Walking for our online Bible study. If you haven't had a chance yet, read chapter 20 in the book and also read Luke chapter 4 verses 1 through 13 and read chapter 21 in the book as well as John chapter 2 verses 1 through 12. Chapter 20 and 21 take us through the next couple of stages of Jesus' life. So far, Jesus has been born in Bethlehem. He and his family have escaped to Egypt as refugees. He grew up in Nazareth. He traveled to Jerusalem for the Passover. And now he's an adult. He gets baptized in the Jordan River and he runs into the wilderness. Jesus spends 40 days in the wilderness preparing for his ministry. And that's where we get the idea of the 40 days of Lent. We also spend 40 days in preparation every year for Christ's passion, his death and resurrection during Holy Week. But while Jesus is in the desert, the devil shows up and tests Jesus. I always think it's funny that the devil thinks he can actually get away with testing Jesus. Isn't he kind of aware of Jesus and his whole point? But here's one of the things, is that the main test is for Jesus to do a miracle. I find it interesting that this story made it in the Bible at all, because no one was there to see Jesus or the devil have this conversation. But the gospel writers seem to think it was important to tell us that Jesus chooses not to do these miracles just to show off for Satan or anyone else. He waits until it's the right time to give a miracle. And that's what Brian talks about in chapter 21. Jesus does give a miracle at a wedding in Cana. His disciples and his mom know about it, but nobody else does. This is a very unusual kind of Savior. And Brian talks about it like this. Jesus will not use his power for personal comfort and pleasure. He will refuse unscrupulous means to achieve just and peaceful ends, and Christ will not reach for spectacle over substance. So Jesus sets the course for the great work before him, not driven by a human lust for pleasure, power, or prestige, but empowered by the Spirit. In other words, Jesus isn't doing miracles just to show off, to convince us that he's the Son of God. Jesus knows he's the Son of God. He'll do miracles as they're needed to point to something specific. So we learn in chapter 21 that Jesus' first miracle is this wedding at Cana. And David brought up a really good point in our Bible study. It seems like a useless miracle. It's not like making wine for a wedding is all that essential. He's not curing lepers or saving the world. But Brian brings up a really good point. Jesus takes water jugs, not for drinking water, but ceremonial washing jugs, the kinds that would have been used for cleaning of oneself religiously, for religious cleaning. He takes those and turns those jugs into wine jugs, overflowing with the absolute best wine. In this way, Jesus points towards the end of his ministry, when he takes an old religious custom, the Passover, and he turns it into a new religious opportunity, communion. Everything about Jesus will be turning over old ideas and creating new ones. So Brian asks us to consider, in what ways are our lives like a wedding banquet that is running out of wine? What are we running out of? What are the stone containers in our day, huge but empty vessels used for religious purposes? And what would it mean for those empty containers to be filled with wine? With so much wine, what would that superabundance signify? What would it mean for Jesus to repurpose containers that used to signify the difference between clean and unclean? What might it mean for God to save the best for last? During the Thursday Bible study, someone brought up that a lot of the churches in America today are like those empty ceremonial washing pots. Too many of our churches are empty today. But what if Jesus has a brand new idea? Something that God will do with those buildings. A way that God will use those empty vessels for good. What do you think? I can't wait to hear your feedback in the comments. Thanks for joining us.